freedom-wise, yes, it's there, right? You're your own boss, but it's not easier. It's exponentially harder. The stress level, the pressure, the workload, and all of those things I think combined definitely doesn't make it easier. But I think the fact that this is your choice makes it a little acceptable to go through the struggle.
Welcome to the Rise and Play podcast. I am Sophie Vaux, your host and leadership coach. In the show, my wonderful co-host and I sit down with influential and diverse leaders from the gaming industry to hear about their leadership journey. Not the well-polished stories, but the real stories. The up and down, the breakthrough, and the failures. Or should we rather say learnings? Each episode will transport you into a magical space of vulnerability with our guest. And together, you'll be reminded that no matter how hard it is, you are not alone in this journey and find the courage to keep going. Come and join the ride. Let's begin. Oh, and one last thing, I am working on new ideas to scale our impact on leadership health and consciousness in games. Would you like to be part of the change too? Then let's connect. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rise and Play. We have Emily Yim here in the hot seat, co-founder and CEO of Superbloom. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Emily, co-founder and CEO of Superbloom, has a studio that's dedicated to developing lifestyle games that empower and inspire women. Her career spans 15 years across mobile gaming. Some highlights have her leadership at Dots and Glue, where she helped scale hit games that resonated with just millions of women worldwide. But at her new gig, Superbloom, Emily is driving a new wave of gaming experiences, ones that blend creativity, connection, and inclusivity, and have a vision to redefine entertainment for women globally. And I believe that she has a new global launch coming out soon with Venue.
Yeah, that's right. Our first game Venue is in soft launch now and globally launched in January 25th. So next year, very soon.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I hope you guys aren't going to have to be working too much over the holidays over there in Bordeaux, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm based in. Yes. No, we're well prepared. And yeah, we're excited to go reach even broader audience. We soft launched in the US in September, and it's been really exciting to get the feedback from our audiences, players. We started to have really loyal fan base and who are, hardcore engaging and giving us feedback and really bringing us a lot of values to get to the next steps. So yeah, it's a really great time.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. I know I also am going to have a lot of work to do over the holidays. I'm usually more of a talker, which is why I have this podcast with Sophie. But I've been doing a lot of writing, actually. So I recently came out with a report in partnership with Adamo and Games Forum that I've been on the conference circuit exploring hybrid monetization with the new marketing landscape and IDFA and all of those things, that it's just really hard to launch a new game without ad monetization or having some kind of direct to player business with web stores, which are now quickly becoming mainstream. I'm actually talking in the new Apps Flyer report that's coming out December 6th. But that's looking at the state of monetization from their perspective as an MMP with just tens of thousands of digital signals. So I have a few quotes in there and a blog post coming out with them that kind of digs deeper into that. And also the report that I recently did that looks more at, okay, how are game makers responding to this with a survey industry-wide? So I will be happy to have those out and done, as well as something else with Deconstructor of Fun. So I think a lot for anyone listening to this podcast to try and look forward to is to check out Venue if it is open in a country near you. If not, it definitely will be. Sounds like by January 25th. And read up on how to do hybrid monetization.
I'd love to really read up on that. Hybrid monetization and ad monetization is passion of mine as well. So I'm really curious about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. What type of game is Venue? Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it, what type of monetization you guys are doing and your audience that you're targeting.
Yeah, sounds good. Venue is a interior design, decoration, lifestyle game. So, core loop is customization, and you customize any space, room, anywhere from like cozy kitchen to, reading nook to, living rooms and, bigger houses to boat houses and private jets and weddings and parties. So there's lots of different kind of customization you can do. And with those designs, you get voted by community of people, you get scores, you get virtual currency out of it, and then you continue your designer journey. We try to casualize the gameplay from sort of previous generations of design games. And while doing that, we also thought about ad monetization as sort of backbone of our monetization strategy. So we have those, from even soft launch days, and we have it part of an economy rather than kind of an add-on bonus that you can get by watching an ad and you get some sprinkles of rewards here and there. It's not like that. It's really, you know, kind of a hybrid monetization angle of like, if you're not watching an ad, you're missing out big time. So that's sort of an angle that we injected from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like exactly the way to do it. I think there's a ton of legacy apps out there that are struggling right now because if you've already baked in the economy, there's usually not the diversity of different currencies or ways to progress through IAP that easily lend themselves to ad monetization because you obviously don't want to give as much progress as if you did IAP. You have to have something that's a little bit more fractional. But I think you guys are in
Exactly.
a great position to do something where you really are missing out if you don't do the ads, but you don't have to. And at the same time, when you're getting rewards through ads, you don't necessarily have to segment it to only non-payers if you've baked that into your
Right.
economy already.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think many games in this genre don't actually have ads because the CPIs are so high. And if you get it right, a lot of the LTVs can be as well. This subgenre is just super competitive. So I'm wondering what made you want to jump in and start your own company in this area, which has really struggled to grow post launches of Redecor. I know there's also Jam City Head Property Brothers. So I'm sure you guys really thought about how you wanted to position yourself in this genre.
Yeah. Competition wise, you can look at it from a different angle. If you look at truly designed core games, there's not a lot of players out there. There was Design Home, and there still is Design Home as in top grossing chart. We did
Mhm.
core. Besides that, there is no true, design core games. There's, you know, exterior design type of a game called Garden Joy, and then there's like food styling kind of a game out there. There's a lot of fashion games. There are more fashion games out there than, interior design decoration kind of a category. But if you look at it from like broader perspective where design is a meta, design is part of the game, but core might not be design. So there's merge games with design, there's, match games with design, other type of puzzle games with design meta. So if you kind of capture all of that, then it could look pretty crowded. But they definitely have an overlap, and we wanted to get to that overlapping part of the audience. That was the part of ambition. But our true competitors that we see is really design core games. And I think if you look at it from that sense, the challenge is not really many competitors out there. The challenge is that, the sort of the pie of the whole genre has not been growing beyond these two titles. And they're not really also growing themselves. Like the pie is not getting bigger because they're not really growing. So, with that in mind, our angle was, hey, like, as a design core game, how do we survive? How do we become successful? How do we reach broader audiences? And we really kind of approached in casualizing the gameplay, making it easy to play. We thought, having many, many options and many, many nodes in one scene was very overwhelming. It's great for creativity. You can choose this options, that options, and then you can like make really different and sometimes weird combinations, which is part of the creativity, right? But on the other hand, it's very difficult to do. It takes a lot of time. You need to be really creative and also good at it in terms of design skills. So, kind of ease of access, easy to play, easy to get to the satisfactory results. That's kind of where we really drill down on, and making the game also more beautiful, that we have a very high standard art style. So we wanted to make it very photorealistic, easy to play, casualized with ad monetization baked in to monetization strategy. And lastly, I think we have tried to, differentiate ourselves by putting some more storylines and narratives into it. So, not just a beautiful space that you decorate and it becomes nice, but also there's a story behind what, who owns this room, whose house is it, why do they want to decorate, what kind of styles do they like, what color is their favorite. So that sort of a backstory really gives you a sense of immersion.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been playing the game a bit and I do really like the art style. It seems a lot more grown up than a lot of the games that I've seen in the past that can kind of lean towards a bit more on the cartoonish side. It makes me feel like I'm actually working with real products. And I remember back when I used to play Design Home, I had never designed my own space in my entire life. Like I always had apartments that came basically pre-furnished in a very Spartan way. So I felt like I was learning life skills playing the game. So I think there's a cool angle with Venue where it's not just decorating a home. You can kind of learn these like life skills in a bunch of different verticals, almost like modern home ec if you think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, you've actually been on the podcast before with Rise and Play. About 2 years ago, you were on with Betty talking about leading best practices on how to design a workplace for leaders as mothers. I remember at the time, I think you had just started Superbloom. So now that we're here, another 2 years have gone by. What are some like surprising hard truths about being a CEO that you might have not known when you were going into it?
Well, I think first thing is that when I recorded the first podcast, it was probably in the first 6 months to even within the year after starting Superbloom, which is definitely honeymoon phase of starting a company. We
Mm-hmm.
have just gotten funded by, venture capital, and we were starting our team, we were building our prototype, hopes and dreams and, all the good things and rosy glasses on everything, right?
Yeah. And 2022 was a great time to fundraise for a gaming company too.
Exactly. So market was in a different place. So I think I was, a lot more in this hopeful land for everything, not, from the games perspective, market perspective, fundraising perspective, as well as, being a CEO and being a mother. So I think I kind of had this energy of like, you can do anything and it's like all possible. You can juggle it all. Well, fast forward in 2 years, maybe I was naive and that was a very, rosy glass point of view. Being an entrepreneur is hard, is really tough, and at the same time, being a parent is also hard. There is no easy way. There is no, crazy right way to balance it. You always just have to juggle. You have to be kind of fine that you're always juggling. So I just kind of found my piece that, hey, things are always changing. Something's always gonna come out of the way and then like surprise me, good or bad. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and you get more resilient as a result, and you grow a lot as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. You get to do many different things from small to big. You might have to be in a very micro lens of like, replying to support ticket. And then, you're thinking about 10-year roadmap and then like big vision on the same day, even like, a couple hours apart. And that's sort of something that made me grow a lot. So yeah, I have less rosy glasses, but feel a bit more matured and grown up as a result.
I distinctly remember you saying on the last podcast that I think before you had been the CPO or the head of product at a gaming startup, that you actually thought being the CEO was easier because you had a bit more freedom in how you designed your life around it. So, okay, where are we sitting on this statement now?
Okay. So freedom wise, yes, it's there, right? And you're your own boss and, but it's not easier. It's exponentially harder. The stress level, the pressure, the workload, and all of those things I think combined definitely doesn't make it easier. But I think the fact that this is your choice, that you're not being forced to do it, someone is not, it's not someone is telling you to do it. You're deciding to do it on your own, makes it a little acceptable to go through the struggle. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I
That makes
take
a
it
lot of
back
sense.
to 5 points. Really kind of coming off as like it's easier. No, it's not.
Was there something that surprised you by it not being as hard as you had anticipated about startup life?
No, I can't think of any because I think when I jumped into being a CEO and then start becoming a founder, I really didn't think very hard about what would be challenging, what would be very difficult, like what could go wrong, that sort of stuff. It was sort of like just jumping into the water because if I don't, I'm going to regret it. It was like just as
Mm-hmm.
simple as that. So I didn't really think through really a lot when I started. And as a result, like, like ups and downs come and I'm like, whoosh and whoosh, like what's happening? So it
Mm-hmm.
never felt like, this is actually easier than what I thought. No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think that's one of the qualities that we hear very often in founders who really make it, though, is that they have this like unrelenting optimism that is maybe a bit naive, but it's what gives them the courage to really jump in. And given you guys did raise your round in 2022, I mean, 2023 is a totally different market. You might have not been able to raise as well or gotten as many good people as quickly as you did if you had actually taken the time to think about it and still arrived at the same conclusion. So I'm happy to hear like so far how it's been working for you, but it sounds like there are probably some really big lessons on the leadership side there. And as someone who has actually been a leader for quite a long time, it sounds like now being the CEO was quite a different role for you. So do you have any like highs and lows from the trenches of what you really learned showing up each day, knowing that all the accountability is with you?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe highs and lows are in the same kind of a vein. I consider our company, Superbloom's high, is our team, how we built up our team over the years, how we kind of like gelled our team, how we built our culture and values. And in the beginning, my co-founder Susha and I, like we kind of sat down and we like really drilled down to what are the core values that we want to really implement in the company? What kind of a company do we want to build? What kind of people do we want to have in the team? And at that point, like we had like one employee, and it felt really kind of like, how do we really build it? How do we reinforce it? Right. And it just felt like a bunch of words that we wrote down on a document. And over the kind of course of a year or two, we had initial team members and then we had, also lost some people along the way. And then we kind of like, made our team stronger, kind of throughout that journey. And then we made sure that we have a team who are still with us, who are really kind of like living by the values that we said that we were going to build a company around, which is really has to do with someone who has growth mindset, someone who's really curious, someone who's self-starting, not asking for permission, it's just kind of going and getting, and very kind of equipped for small scale startup. We're still 14 people, all remote team. So everybody wears multiple hats and everybody's just sort of like grabbing things as they can help out to a degree. And so that sort of like self-starting quality is very important. So, having built those people and, as part of the team and, meeting that value is the high for the company. And then maybe lower part is, having to let go of some people, hire someone and then let go, or not finding someone that we thought it would be great. There's a lot of people related things that are hard, for building a startup. So that I would say as a low light.
Mm-hmm. And are there any lessons around like, hey, what's the right time to cut someone loose? Did you feel like maybe there were ones where you more hesitated too long trying to work with someone on their performance? Or like, are there a few people where maybe you brought them in and then you just didn't have the support in place for them to be successful? I feel like with startups, there's always so many different lessons on the hiring side and how you're doing your onboarding.
I mean, all of the people we never had a case where they were just absolutely horrible. Like they were all great. They were great on in their own way. They have amazing backgrounds, they have experiences, they have skill sets. But it's really kind of around, are you startup ready, or are you used to being a part of a bigger team? And therefore you like to stay in your kind of a lane, and you won't really step out of it. And when we first starting to build a team, like that's something that I overlooked. I valued a lot about like, oh, what kind of games did you work on? What kind of companies were you part of? What teams? And if they had really, impressive CV where, they worked on big franchises, I think I put a lot of emphasis on that. And on the hindsight, what really mattered was that sort of a growth mindset, being curious, being self-starting, and being not afraid to like step out of your comfort zone and that sort of a stuff. Like if you have to learn something out of scratch, like, to be part of the team and to help out in certain areas that nobody's doing, being like not afraid to do so. So those were the qualities I think that was really important. And if we were a bigger team, bigger company, we would have probably had a little bit more room to work on those kind of things with performance reviews, performance improvements. But at the end of the day, we were a really small company. We are still to this day a very small startup. So we don't really have a room for that, both timeline wise and resources wise. So, we had to make a decision pretty quickly when it really came down to it, because it would just cost the business too much for, delay of the launch, feature development, all the business roadmap, the cost is too much.
Yeah, and I know being based out of Europe too, there's a lot of laws that you have to be aware of. And it's a very different regulation atmosphere to be able to actually hire slowly and fire quickly, which, in Silicon Valley is kind of the mantra. But in Europe, you really can't fire quickly in most countries. So you have to be really careful about the choices that you make. A lot of the time when Superbloom was announcing new hires, that it felt like they were very diverse. And I know that you guys are making games for women by women. And I have been in several studios where there were, 140 people, and I was still the only female product person in the discipline, or the only female person in leadership. So I think your guys' first product manager was another woman. And I've seen you guys make really good choices over the past 2 years.
Thank you. We didn't really think about it too much. And lately, when I was like making a deck for something, I counted all our female employees, team members, and it came out to be 57%. To me, that's not like a crazy mind blowing, like 70%, 80%. So I was like, oh, that's good. But then when people told me like industry standard is like 20%, 25% women in the team. So I guess it's double that. So I think we're on a good track so far.
Yeah, no, that is great. I think, overall tech is like 35%, and then games are lagging behind. So I know that I've been at studios where they had an initiative to even try to get the women or non-binary representation up to 30%, and that it was a big like restructuring of many hiring processes to filter out unknowing bias, and also in like how you're sourcing. So if from the beginning you guys got 57%, that's really great. And I think also kind of an interesting fact of, even when you have games targeting women and largely like made by women, that's still 57%, and not something where, okay, yeah, you're going to an office where it's just like all girls hanging out, right? Which I think is sometimes what people think when you say games made by women for women.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a balanced kind of a portion. Like we're not trying to actively hire just women for all of our teams. I think it's just turned out to be that way because, we tend to value a lot of people who are passionate about the company vision and the game itself. And it's sort of that, I think, just helps, maybe gathering more of those profiles.
Yeah, and I think this is also just a cornerstone of your company strategy with Superbloom too, which is really what traditional studios miss when they're trying to build games for women. So I'd love to hear from you. What does it mean to design games, not just like about women, but for women? And how do you find that authenticity in your content?
That's like, first thing that we thought about building the company. How do you make games for women meaningfully? And it kind of, started with an angle where observation towards the market, where there's a lot of games out there that are targeting women and, supposedly making games for women, right, as a target audience. And a lot of them are pretty similar in terms of their mechanics. The themes are quite similar to each other. Genre-wise, they're quite limited is one way to say it. Not too diversified is probably the word I should use. A lot of similar games, merge games, match games, certain simulation games, and in different themes, very similar mechanics. And I, kind of always felt like there's a lot of games that are cookie cutter like, and they're sort of derivative of others. And looked at it from a very business angle, like, hey, this game is performing really well. Let's make another one like that in this kind of a theme. Let's try to micro innovate certain, features. Not thinking in terms of like, why do women play these games and what's their motivation? What is the value they're getting out of it? So it's kind of started from that angle where, when we first thought about our game, why do we even play games? And especially this kind of design category, lifestyle games, what's their motivation? And we did a ton of research in terms of content. Our first content research was on Pinterest. So we identified a lot of different kind of category of content, and fashion also stood out, beauty stood out, design was a big category. There was food, there was health, all sorts of different kind of like verticals of content. And we thought design category really kind of resonated with us and has an opportunity in the market, given there's not a lot of the design core competitors out there. So that's how we got to choose the content category. But then really kind of building the core mechanics, which are familiar already. So like the design core customization mechanics are already familiar from other games out there. And then, also like, why do people play these kind of games, especially more casual side of games? And we identify the motivation of really kind of women like to feel productive, and they want to have this sense of progression. They want to also feel creative. They want to have, kind of an experience of relaxation, de-stress. And it all kind of came down to, I don't know, when we looked at ourselves as my co-founder and I are both like millennial moms, and we're like our days, normally it's like very overwhelming, tiring. We're always kind of like, we have a lot of things going on. And at the end of the day, what you're seeking for games is like feeling like you have done something right. And you have this kind of desire to relax and like unwind. And it really kind of resonated with how we were feeling as a kind of a part of the target audience. And so we looked at it from the motivation angle and designed our mechanics and systems around the motivation. So I think it's really kind of like how you're building the game and what kind of angle you approach it from. That's how we differentiate the making games for women.
Oh, that's really insightful, especially as you looked at all of the different content verticals. Is there a different way that you think women like to engage with games than men? And I know a lot of people might say something like competitive here, or like vanity skins or something might resonate more with men. But at the same time, I found a lot of women are really, really highly engaged with the games that they love. They just might be different types of games. So I'd love to hear from you as kind of like, what do you see as the key motivations there that you could actually build within like 7 different content categories?
So the social mechanic wise, and also like this kind of competitive mechanic wise, when we did our research on motivations, what we found out for our audience types, they don't like to compete against another person. Like PvP is not really a huge kind of a motivation for them. They get turned off by it. But they will compete if they're competing group against group. So you get to collaborate within the group, and then you could compete against other group. That competition is really fierce, and like they were, willingly do it. But really kind of the core social interaction they like to do is collaborating. So that's kind of how we build our initial social mechanics around. We are not really promoting like, scoring wise, right? Like, in our game, you get your own score. And we're building out kind of like, the next kind of a social feed type of a thing where you can see like, high top designs, but you're not really being compared to another person. And
Hmm.
that also adds the value in terms of like, you're not stressed about like how you're compared to others. You feel like your score is yours and you want to do well, of course. And you get upset if you get like shitty scores, but it's, between the game and you, not like, oh, like I get stressed because like compared to that design, which is horrible, I got lower scores, and which is pretty upsetting feeling. So yeah, we're trying to stay away from that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the games that I play regularly is Wordscapes that until a few years ago, I think Carol Mew, who's been on the podcast, was the CEO of with People Fun. And it's definitely targeting a female audience. And they have leaderboards for like how many brilliance points you have for solving things. But I've noticed that just there's so much more engagement on the game as soon as there's a like guild event where the guild is trying to get a collective score of enough points over a weekend time frame. So there's definitely a lot where you have like the cooperation where as soon as you want to do your duty by not letting your like group down, your club or your guild, then you're willing to put it in for the score, and you want people within your guild to know what your score contribution was. But just as a standalone, it's kind of like, I don't know, do I care if a faceless person sees me on
Mm-hmm.
a leaderboard as like me as an individual when I'm already like have a screen username or something like that?
Yeah.
I think that there's one other major, maybe stereotypical pastime that women have that we're sort of tapping into with design home that has also been big in the headlines recently of shopping, and that there's been a big trend of gaming worlds and universes lately doing real e-commerce integrations. But I just see this as a really tricky area to do well, or very unsure if this could work for any gaming company that is really trying to build a brand. There's definitely a lot of demand from the brands themselves. Of when I was at King and we were doing the ad monetization and demand for quite a while, King actually didn't have ads for other games. So it was a lot of lifestyle brands and shopping brands that knew, okay, you're going to Candy Crush and you're going to find the soccer moms. And there's definitely a much bigger, diverse group of people, because if you have over 200 million monthly active users, they're not all soccer moms. But there was,
Right.
I think, like always an unmet need of brands wanting to reach women through these new games that they knew that they were spending like an hour a day on. But if you're also trying to sell these digital or like physical goods, what mindset really is your user in? So I think Roblox had allowed creators previously to sell digital goods, but you only got Robux for it, and then you had to cash that out. And if you wanted to cash it out to USD, then you only really were keeping about 10% of the digital goods ultimate value, because there would be all of these platform fees taken out when the user buys, and then also once you're cashing out with the exchange rate. So recently, I think earlier this year, they integrated Shopify. So now you can actually purchase items directly through the brand, through the link that you might put in your Roblox experience, or that you can use Roblox as like awareness to drive downloads of external apps. Like I think Chipotle did this really successfully, and Walmart and Elf have started to do this. We also know TikTok has had a lot of success with their Shopify and Amazon direct buy integrations. So just thinking back to like OG Design Home, they always had a way where you could buy the physical goods of these real brands that you're using in their competitions. But it was really just linking out to the brand's webpage. And then from there, you would kind of leave the app experience and have to decide if you wanted to buy something or not. And it's unclear if they got any kind of like affiliate revenue cut from this. So I would really just love your take on being in this home decoration space and there being a clear opportunity with Venue, but also with you guys, I think having your own designed goods that are not necessarily goods that you're going out and shopping for on the market. Do you have your own thesis for really bridging the gap between these digital and physical worlds? Since we're talking about player motivations, like what are the key things that you think players would want to tap into that is clearly resonating with some part of the audience there?
In terms of bridging gap between digital world and physical world, that's not part of e-commerce. I think what we're focusing really on is what you kind of mentioned earlier in the conversation, which is give the values into their real life. Like they learn how to design, they practice how to design, they learn about their taste, and they can use this kind of almost a muscle memory for design by practicing on venue, and they could take it to their real life and decorate their surroundings better, the home better, their little corner of the house better, and get a lot of inspirations from it. So there's that connection between like, hey, like I'm just playing this on my phone, but then it actually brings value to my real life. And that's really closely tied to like, our company vision. We do get a lot of questions about e-commerce kind of an angle because our style is super photorealistic. So when they play the game, everybody's just thinking to themselves like, oh, what if you have a real brand in here? What if you sell those branded items, through, I don't know, the brand website or yourselves, whatever, however the channel could work. For a very long time, I also thought of it from that very opportunistic angle, where it's like, hey, you have this engaged players who love design and decorating, and you have an opportunity to maybe put, the real branded items in the game. Would they buy it? And if they do, it's a great opportunity to get some, maybe extra revenue potential, affiliate revenue, brand partnership revenue, whichever that might be. But running venue and building it and like really thinking really hard about it and seeing our audience behavior, I think more and more I'm leaning towards that motivation for purchase. It comes from a certain mindset where audience is in. So when people play games, they're actively engaging. Their action is always happening by tapping and thinking. They're trying to get entertainment value out of it, but it's interactive, right? They're not just sitting on the couch and like, kind of passively consuming content. They're doing something. And so I think it's harder to make them kind of go out of their way while they're doing something interactively, which is a purchase. And I think it's really hard to take people out of that motivation of a zone and make them think about like, what about this in my house? And like kind of imagining that and then making a purchase decision even like quickly on their phone. I think it's a really hard thing to do, especially if those items are big ticket items like big furnitures and like expensive luxury goods. It's not something that a lot of players who will be mostly non-payers anyway, right? And they will like buy, I don't know, $500, $5,000 item on their phone as part of that journey. That's pretty hard to come by. So the theory that I've been developing is really more about how to really then tap into the gamers, the audience's motivation, players' motivation. Why are they here? They're there because they love playing your game, right? And so their motivation should be, what am I getting, if I make the purchase, and do I get something back? And I think there will be a lot of players and already out there. People are thinking about this, kind of like a real world, like reward program where, you buy something somewhere and then you earn something, or you play this game and then you earn something back, right? There's a lot of like that play to earn programs and platforms out there as well. And some folks are thinking about how to connect that with the e-commerce platform too. Like if you, get those kind of like Target receipts and like maybe you get a coupon somewhere else. And I don't know, we're not trying to build any kind of a tech or tool ourselves, but if there was something that enabled, hey, like, we can maybe like, have this platform as sort of like e-commerce loyalty program opportunity. So if you bought this home goods in Target and then you would get like earn something back, that goes back into venue, that sort of a thing. So kind of tying like your in-game motivation with the e-commerce motivation.
Yeah, I think that actually could make a lot of sense because if you think about the motivation, but also trying to handle any type of logistics from any like white labeling physical good or asking players to like buy directly from the website. It's kind of like now, well, if you're successful in that, you've probably ended their session on your game as well. So I hear you kind of talking about more of this. What if like all of your progress is translatable outside into the real world for whenever you're then
Mhm.
taking that break from the game and you're in this shopping mindset?
Right, exactly. And it's like it's in the back of your mind, and it's sort of like, I don't know, these like bank platforms, like, I get like, I don't know, Chase offers, and like, there's like 20% off for Sephora. And I'm like, I shop at Sephora anyways, so might as well. I use my Chase card and then get this discount, that sort of a thing. So just connecting in the back of my mind, like, I'm loyal to this customer, this brand, I'm loyal to this brand. Let's do it together. That sort of a thing.
Yeah, I also think there's an interesting opportunity of thinking like, how do you think about this as a two-way street, right? Because what if every time that you were shopping at these brands, it was actually a reminder to play your favorite games again, and that you could use any loyalty points from these brands through any like converting some portion of it into like currency or special items in game. And then there could be like multiple different loyalty portals that you could connect together. So
Yeah.
it's something where like this whole thing is really nascent, I think, because people realize that people who spend money in games are people who love shopping in general. And so connecting these different threads is beneficial to a wide variety of publishers, but they're just totally different businesses, these brick and mortars. So for quite a while, they weren't really recognizing the value even in having ad inventory on these mobile games. That's really exciting. I've also seen you guys do something with some big brands pretty early on that I thought were really cool. So this was before you guys were even in global launch, but you had a collaboration with the chain smokers with the venue launch, where I think you could like redesign their loft in New York City. So I would just love to know like how did you guys get in touch with them? Do you know their guy? Could you introduce us? So be
I could connect you with them. I mean, it's such a, maybe people don't imagine, us, featuring them, but it's more of a straightforward story than what you would imagine. So the Chainsmokers, the musicians, they also have venture capital fund. So they're also investors, and it's called Mantis. And they became investors for us last year as we raised some more money since our initial round in 2022. So we did raise extra round in 2023, and they came in as an investor as part of that round. And so, yeah, they've been a huge fan of us, and they themselves like are really kind of affected by design and art, and that design really kind of sets their mood for making music. So the surroundings and design is really important for them. So as part of our US soft launch, you know, they were willing to come in and be featured in the game. And, we rendered their real spaces in all 3D and really built their homes in New York and, Hollywood Hills, as well as a recording studio to, the real kind of a layout and in 3D themselves, I think felt weird kind of designing their own space in digitally and designed by other people. But I think it was a fun project.
I just love the idea of thinking of these guys just on venue, just wondering when you're going to come out with new content because they love designing all of these different parties and weddings and like my new like modern businesswoman bedroom in Paris are some of the different quests that you guys have. Oh my gosh, I love that idea. So I think it's interesting if you could maybe talk about what was the like product thesis behind this, because this opportunity often like obviously very different than designer brand wares, but was this something where like you were thinking of driving new installs for you using the chain smokers audience awareness? Or was this also like a two-way street using the audience within your game who are like, women love the chain smokers to try to drive awareness for their own brand?
I mean, one, I think it was a really kind of fun collaboration for a celebrity to have their space in the game and the audience
Mhm.
could design the real place that way. And two, I think, we would like to get, installs, organic installs from their fan base. They are planning on promoting us sometime by end of this year. So, that's going to happen
Mhm.
fairly soon. They do have 7 million followers on Instagram. So the audience that we can send is not as big as what they can send us. So I'm sure we will benefit more, but when at some point we could grow in big enough so we can be meaningfully sending our audience back to the change workers too.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, I think this is just such an interesting angle for games like this because maybe it doesn't necessarily tap into like the fantasy of all players of venue wanting to design this specific person's place. But I think for anyone who is a fan of the brand, it makes just so much sense that if you're paying this money to get like really good concert seats, that you would really want to think about like, where is this music recorded? I know big fans of music brands, they even go and they spend $20,000 trying to buy the exact speakers that their favorite band's music was recorded on so that they can hear exactly the same thing that they heard. Or like, what is their loft that they sleep in look like? And what if you could decide what that is? So I think there's a lot of like almost more on the personalized arm of it, of finding like what are the biggest brand affinities that the audience has for any kind of game like this that's design based, and then helping them design what their different fantasies are. By the way, like I know no easy feat 3D rendering a celebrity because they're usually very picky about how they look. And I've known in the past when I've been at studios that does this, that you need to actually only give them like so many tries to edit, or else they might just like have you editing it endlessly. Like you're like, okay, you only get 3. If you don't like how you look then, like game over.
Yeah, I'm aware of those like brand partnerships, like, and like the back and forth and approval process and all of that. But thankfully, they have been really, really chill and easygoing. It is like their space. And we also made sure we're not, rendering something that are, very, branded exactly, kind of like, they do have expensive kind of furnitures, like very unique pieces. But what really kind of is important is like, the feel of the space that kind of comes out true to their style. So like we made sure that happened and everything else was great.
Oh, it's awesome to hear that it went well. So I think we're coming to the end of our questions, but this would just be a great time for you to say if you have any advice for anyone listening who might be seeking a niche in the designer home gaming subgenre. Like, is it part of your go-to-market strategy to always include a celebrity activation, or do you have any other advice?
No, I mean, I don't have a like specific advice. I mean, as you know, like it's hard to launch a new game and hard to scale a game these days in this market. So I think I would urge to think about maybe incorporating, social and community aspects from the get-go, very from an early phase, like kind of building the game around it. I think that's one kind of regret that we have. Like we have a big ambition for social kind of mechanics and, building bigger social systems, and we're on our way to do it. But, as a lot of games do, you need a core kind of part of the game. You need a core mechanic, then you need a supporting systems, you need monetization, you have to build a lot of the things around. So then social gets behind in your roadmap. And thinking about the mechanics that are inherently, having more network effect, that would probably be an advice that I can have for not just for design games, but all kind of like, similar kind of category of games in the market. And I hope there are a lot more games in the lifestyle category that would come out, not just design, but fashion as well, and other subgenres. I would like to see more and more kind of different genres being tackled for the audience.
Superbloom will just have to make all of them. You can have a game in each category, right?
We'll try.
Well, it's been amazing having you on, Emily, especially checking back on how it's been going over the past few years. I love a lot of the knowledge that you've dropped here, especially to not underestimate just how hard it can be being a CEO these days for gaming. Because I think it's like a good reminder that even if you raise in an amazing fundraising environment, that company is going to be around a long time through market downturns and upturns again. So I really admire what you guys have been doing with it. You're one of the launches that have come out from a smaller studio that looks like it's actually scaling really well, which is a really commendable feat in today's environment. So I'm really looking forward to the global launch. on January 25th. And I think by the time this episode comes out, all of those different reports I told you guys I've been writing will have also launched. So go check out the State of Monetization report with AppsFlyer and the different blog posts that I'll have, and also on Deconstructor Fund, because we also heard it from Emily, hybrid monetization, one of the only ways that you can still cut your teeth on a new launch today.
Yes. Yeah. Go read up on that. I definitely will. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I had a lot of fun talking about all of these subjects. And yeah, I hope it was a good one. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll let you go now, and have a great start to your new year, and for all of our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. We keep growing our community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. If you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders, because we have so much more we can learn from each other. And if you want to accelerate your growth, I offer creative leadership coaching and workshop, plus other free resources that you can find on riseandplay.io. I can't wait to connect with you. Have a great week, and remember to take care of yourself. Until the next time,